Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McKeown and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard!
Today we're talking about sleepers. What is a sleeper? Players that we feel are undervalued. Guys you can take near the end of your drafts who have good upside. One of my sleepers this season, John Collins of the Utah Jazz. I cannot quit him.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
I have been riding the stock slowly downward. I keep buying and buying and buying. It keeps low. Now I'm all in. Last season with Atlanta, it feels like rock bottom for Collins. He had this terrible finger injury. It messed up his shooting. But during that main stretch where he was an actual part of their basketball team, he returned top 65 value for 4 straight seasons, including 1 year where he was, I believe, the 12th best player in Roto rankings per game, which is obviously an absurd number, but shows you basically that he's a great permanent player. I'm looking at what Utah did with Lauri Markkanen. They took a guy who was undervalued. They believed in him. They let him do some things that another team thought maybe this guy can't do. And Lauri Markkanen had an amazing season. And I just think I don't even know if I mentioned John Collins' ADP, which is at 104. So approaching free at the end of some drafts with clear top 60 upside.
And, 4 years of great free throw shooting, around 80%. And for 9 category, low turnovers, just a hair over 1 turnover a game. Any worries, Alex, about Kelly Olynyk?
Not really. I think Olynyk might still get 20 minutes a game, but both Olynyk and Collins, I think, can play backup center. So I think there'll be enough minutes.
What about Taylor Hendricks?
Preseason is going to tell us more about Hendricks. Minutes might be a little squeezed, but honestly, it's hard for me to imagine Collins not getting 26 to 28 minutes a game, which I know doesn't sound like that much, but I think he can return value on ADP 104 if he's playing only 28 minutes because Utah spreads the rock a little bit more than Atlanta, which is basically the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young show. I think they're actually interested in his development, unlike Atlanta.
At 19 years of age, it does feel like Hendricks is a bit of a long play for the Jazz.
Top 10 pick. He averaged 15-7, 1.7 blocks, almost 1 steal per game as a freshman. I like Hendricks as a prospect quite a bit. I agree. Yep. He's probably not going to make much of an impact in year 1, especially with Utah's death. I love John Collins this year. He could put together a career season with the Utah Jazz.
Shannon, take us north of the border for your first sleeper.
This is a guy who's going to be picked in the first handful of rounds, but I just love him so much more over his current draft day value that I have to label him a sleeper. Scottie Barnes with the Toronto Raptors. His ADP is in the 50 range, about 53 on ESPN and Yahoo. I fully believe he's going to take a gigantic leap in year 3. This is actually cheaper than what he cost on draft days last year, entering his sophomore season. With no more Fred VanVleet, Scottie Barnes is going to be the de facto point guard for this team. It doesn't matter if Dennis Schroeder and Gary Trent Jr., it doesn't matter if those guys are playing the 1 and the 2 for Toronto. Barnes is the guy who's going to be facilitating the offense for the Raptors. I project him to have top 30 value for fantasy this year. Question marks with his fantasy value are really going to be his 3-point shooting and his efficiency. His efficiency dropped a little bit last year from 49% as a rookie from the floor to 45.6%. I expect a bounce back there. And then shooting percentage from the free throw line, he was at 77%. Jumped up a couple of percentage points in his sophomore season. I expect another increase there. So really, I mean, he's also got defensive upside, 1.9 stocks per game last year. I think he can get over 1 in each category, be in the 2.5 range for defensive stocks. I do think Barnes has all-star upside, and we could see it as soon as this season. He can get to that top 30 value for fantasy.
Ken, who is your first sleeper?
Derrick White, who's got an average ADP of 91. It's as high as 115 on ESPN. D. White is the starting point guard in Boston with Marcus Smart now in Memphis. White should finally have his first season ever of 30-plus minutes a game. He led all guards last year with 76 total blocks. He's looking at 1.8 stocks per game. Excellent percentages, over 46 from the field, almost 88% from the line, over 38 from behind the arc. Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis are going to give White plenty of easy assists. He's finally going to have a 5-plus assists per game season. And last year, with Smart off the court, White had 5.8 assists per 36 minutes. To me, point guards and centers are always a premium. RotoWire has White ranked at 84, but I'm happy to take D. White in the late 60s.
I think the assists are the main thing here.
He really came on the second half of the season with the Celtics. He got thrown into the mix with the prior year, looked a lot more comfortable last season, and really kicked into confidence the second half last year. I think they made this trade knowing they wanted Derrick White to get more minutes. Alex, you want to discuss some news in Brooklyn.
I am preemptively apologizing to everybody. My second sleeper is, in fact, Ben Simmons, who has an ADP of 132 on Yahoo right now. Despite the disastrous season that was last year, still ranked 120th in roto per game value. The depth is terrible. Across the board, their backups are like Dennis Smith, Cam Thomas, Lonnie Walker, Royce O'Neal / Dorian Finney-Smith. It's not very good. At the end of last season, Simmons, not really a part of the plan. Going forward, what do you have to lose by giving him 25, 30 minutes a game, depending on how he looks? And again, the main thing here, ADP of 132. He's free at the end of your drafts. We know what his upside is. He doesn't even have to play that well, because if he puts up 6, 6, and 6 again with a steal, it's fine. Who is your second sleeper, Shannon?
Jabari Smith for the Rockets. ADP on ESPN is 112. ADP on Yahoo is 91. Jabari Smith is one of the guys who has inflated value on best ball. He's at ADP of 59.
Wow.
So basically, 50, 60 spots higher, 30 spots higher than Yahoo, 50, 60 spots higher than on ESPN. I think we're going to see a breakout from Smith. He finished his rookie season very strong. Over the final 12 games for the Rockets, 16.8 points, 8.5 rebounds, 0.9 steals, 0.8 blocks, 1.8 three-pointers. He started off
with
slow.
Good percentage. He wasn't just chucking. He was with good percentages. In fact, he had a really good March and April. Both months were great.
He did, and he put on an offensive clinic at Summer League, which should be expected from a sophomore player, especially one picked top 3 in the draft. We're going to see the draft day pedigree show for Smith this season. Also, with the Rockets, there's a lot of odd depth with everyone they brought in with free agency, like Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks. But the one position they didn't really address is power forward. He's essentially the only power forward on this roster. Eason, Brooks, small forwards. Cam Whitmore, small forward. Jeff Green, originally a small forward, and just basically only plays power forward because he's so old and can't move fast enough to be a 3 anymore.
I'm an old man. I hate everything but Matlock.
But they don't have a lot of force, so I think Smith's going to see a nice boost in playing time. I think there's upside on the defensive end, huge 3-point upside for a power forward as well. I love Smith this year. I think he's going to be a top 50 player.
All right, Ken, who is your second sleeper?
Old man Brook Lopez got an 82 average ADP, 101 on Underdog, 99 ADP on ESPN. His 33 and a third fantasy points per game ranked 67th last year. I'm not sure his game really ages. He's not beating anyone with athletic ability anyway. I mean, yeah, I get it. He's 35 years old, but he doesn't move anyway. How fast does he not have to move? They used to say you can't teach 7 foot. Lopez is 7 foot, and the old guy played in 78 games last season. Almost 2 threes, 2.5 blocks a game, almost 16 points a game. Big comeback for him after 3 down years. How many 3-point shooters hit 53% from the field? This roster hasn't changed at all. I don't count the addition of Robin Lopez as a depth chart change, though it is amusing. I'm happy to get Brook Lopez in the late 60s, early 70s. But hey, enough about Brook Lopez. Alex, give us your third sleeper.
Obi Toppin of the Indiana Pacers, coming from New York. ADP of 136 on Yahoo. Could start for a Pacers team with very little power forward depth. Rookie Jarris Walker, who I like. Everybody else that would consider, in heavy quotation marks, a project. Jordan Nwora, Aaron Nesmith, and Jalen Smith. My guess, Toppin is going to end up somewhere between 24 and 30 minutes a game. As a sophomore, he had 20% usage and averaged 19 and 8 with 2 assists and 1.7 stocks per 36 minutes. It's just hard to evaluate him, partially because he was stuck behind Julius Randle, who's like one of the league leaders in minutes over the past 3 seasons, partially because of Tom Thibodeau, partially because Julius Randle just didn't get hurt. And I think Toppin has only played more than 30 minutes in a game 10, 12 times in his career. It's a super low number.
I love Toppin as well. If you're playing in a standard size league on ESPN or Yahoo's, he's exactly the type of player you're going to want to target with one of your last picks. Just tons of upside. If he ends up carving out just like 26 minutes a game, starting or not, I think he's going to return value there. But there's upside for more, because if he is locked in as a starter all season, reaches 30 minutes per game, we're going to see a very productive late round pick.
Shannon, who is your next sleeper?
I'm going to highlight two guys. First, Mike Conley. We all know the name, not a sleeper on that end, but people are sleeping on him in drafts. His ADP average is about 125, but I am just digging Mike Conley this year. It's hard for me not to smash that button every time I get into those late rounds. After being acquired by Minnesota, 24 games, 14 points, 5 assists, 3.1 rebounds, 1.2 steals, 2.3 threes, and super efficient. Mike Conley will return top 120 value. He will be a guy who you can rely on. There's not going to be anything flashy, but he's going to get you assists late in your draft. That's something that's always hard to find. Also, with a lot of veterans like Mike Conley, he is an old man, 35 years old. That is ancient by NBA terms, but the Minnesota team, and you look at their guard depth behind Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley, and they really don't have a lot. The Timberwolves are going to want Conley out there, helping Rudy Gobert, getting those guys involved in the game plan on offense. He'll see roughly 29, 30 minutes. I think he's a safe option late. The other deep option, late round flyer, like Collin Sexton. I'm never going to quit you, baby.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
I love you. I think there's a good chance he starts for Utah this year. You know, he had some health issues early last season. When he did start, he was highly productive. He is still a young man. Collin Sexton, even though he's entering his 6th NBA season, is 24. I like Sexton to bounce back this year. Even in the limited role, 24 minutes per game with Utah, still averaged 14 points, 3 assists, hyper efficient for a guard. I expect Sexton to have a bigger role with Utah this year.
All right, Ken, who are your last sleepers?
Steven Adams in Memphis. Adams last year was ranked 93rd in fantasy points per game. We all know Jaren Jackson doesn't rebound. Adams had 11.5 rebounds per game last year before he got hurt. He's only 30 years old. I know he looks 45 and he should be doing Aquaman movies. His 1.1 blocks per game would have ranked 22nd if he played more games to qualify, and he's a full go for training camp. Yes, he's a terrible free throw shooter, but only takes 3 per game, so it really doesn't matter math-wise. Love Steven Adams at an average ADP of 141. That's free, especially if you're in 2 center leagues. Stash him on your bench as your 3rd center for free. Love it. I'm looking at sophomore Mark Williams in Charlotte. His ADP is a little more expensive at 110, but hey, he should start every game. His minutes ought to go from 19 per last year, probably around 28 per game this year. I'm expecting over 1.5 blocks per game. Got excellent percentages, 64% from the field, 70% from the line, which is pretty good for a center. Charlotte knows not much of a future with a front court of P.J. Washington, Miles Bridges, and Nick Richards. Those 3 have lost a lot of games for the Hornets. Williams is only 21. The future should be Mark Williams in Charlotte.
I think that's a wrap. We'll have more sleepers throughout the year. Preseason will tell us a lot more. This was a nice group of players.
Beautiful. I'm going to end thanking you, gentlemen, for your 2008 finals hoodie, because I won last year's bet on the Celtics doing better than the Bucks in the playoffs, and whatever crazy game win total we had for the Pistons. I forget what that rule was. But thank you, gentlemen, for my lovely Mitchell and Ness replica short sleeve hoodie. You don't see a lot of those. Don't really have the guns to justify a short sleeve hoodie, but I appreciate how quickly you fulfilled the bet.
Short sleeve hoodies, we call that the Belichick cut. Yeah. Nice. Those guns
I see body type, essentially.
You have the tricep of an 80-year-old grandma.
All right, that does it for this 3 call fantasy trade wreck.